Things have been really good. They've held up. We've had it for a long time. They do really well. Sound quality is really good too. All right, we were on. We're going to go to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes. I know we didn't because we did Proverbs 31 we did the whole chapter study when we were talking about women in worship. So I don't want to go back over it again at this particular juncture. So obviously we'll look at it again later sometime under another topic and title and subject or whatever. But today we want to start with the book of Ecclesiastes. An introduction to the book of Ecclesiastes. Okay. I concur. I haven't heard a lot of Bible studies on the book of Ecclesiastes, or a lot of people teaching on the book of Ecclesiastes. So I expect this to be my claim to fame online. The one man with the guts to do it. But the interesting thing about Ecclesiastes, and I think it's amazing how the Holy Spirit just brings everything together. Because I had been doing a lot of studies on a particular item, and you came and you asked, about the book of Ecclesiastes. I thought at first, I was really kind of wanting to get into those topics that I've been studying some way, shape, or form or another. And so I'm meditating, reading through the book of Ecclesiastes, reading material on it to see, okay, if I did Ecclesiastes, how would I? And then all of a sudden the Holy Spirit brought everything that I had been studying and the book of Ecclesiastes all together. And I'm like, really? And so it was easy to outline, because I've already been meditating on this particular topics. But I think one of the reasons why at first I thought is because you haven't ever heard anybody really do a study on it. And people kind of stay off of it like they stay off kind of the Song of Songs, but it's because of the certain material that's contained in the Song of Solomon. Which I think is a beautiful poem. And I think I think if you're going to learn about that stuff, the Bible's the best place to learn from it, so it is good. But I also understand society's proprieties, and especially when there's little ears in the room. And but at the same time, Ecclesiastes, I think, is one of those things people kind of stay away. But this is the amazing journey I've had studying the book of Ecclesiastes without actually knowing I was studying the book of Ecclesiastes. And so we're going to start this morning with just an introduction, because we need to frame the book of Ecclesiastes. And I think when you frame it correctly, I think then it becomes a great book to study and an easy book to study. Okay, once you frame it. The interesting thing about the book, okay, again, there's a lot of scholarly material out there. People have studied it. You just don't really hear anybody teach it. As far as the authorship goes of the book, we know it's basically written from Solomon's perspective, but there are some scholars that think maybe somebody else wrote it from Solomon's perspective versus Solomon himself actually writing it. Okay, and again, that's not an uncommon thing. Even some of Paul's letters were written by somebody else, but they were Paul's words. They were dictated by Paul to that person, and then that person finally signs off, and we realize it wasn't Paul that's been doing all this writing all this time. It's been a scribe or a secretary, essentially, kind of writing things down. So you have those who traditionally believe Solomon is the writer. We don't. If there was another person, we have no idea who it is because it's never mentioned. It would not have been uncommon, though, for Solomon to dictate his thoughts to someone else and someone else write it down. And so technically it's written by another person. But it certainly does claim Solomon's wisdom throughout the book. Okay. It's believed it was written toward the end of Solomon's reign. It was put together. And I think if you've ever read through the book of Ecclesiastes, you'd understand it is a book of reflections. Okay. And all the things that he's going to comment on, let's just face it. Okay. It takes a lifetime to come to these conclusions. So it makes sense that it kind of hit the end of his life. There's two things in the book can be divided into, not evenly, okay, but two ideas. There's a theology that's contained in the book, okay, and then there's basic thoughts that are contained in the book. The theology, okay, some say the theology is a man in a crisis of faith, okay, because some of the pessimism and cynicism that is presented in the book, okay, so it's a man in a crisis of faith. Others believe, and I tend to lean on this, that it's a man of faith and a realist. So here's a man with faith that is very rooted in real life. Okay? And he has performed, he's tested his faith. He's challenged life and come back with his conclusions. Okay? And that's what the book is. Then you have his thoughts, and he introduces all the various problems of life, the vanities of life, which are emptiness, things that are empty and have no value. Okay? The limitations of man. Okay? And how God is sometimes hidden, or God's purposes or motives are sometimes hidden. But then he also comes back, and again, we'll get into much more detail as we go through the book. This is just kind of an overview into his solutions for life, such as the most famous probably quote out of the book: fear God and keep his commandments. Okay. He expresses many times throughout the book to enjoy life. Okay. He also encourages people to use wisdom properly. Okay, throughout the book. Again, these are not clear chapter verse divisions. It's the overall scope of what he's going to talk about. I want to look at the first 3 verses this morning because they truly are the introduction to the book. Okay, so you start out with the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Okay, so we start out with, this is where the title of the book comes from. Okay, because the word Ecclesiastes, the title Ecclesiastes, okay, it basically is, it's the Greek version, interpretation of the Hebrew word koheleth, okay, which literally means a speaker to an assembly. Okay, so when the books were put together and sewn together as a single unit, they decided to use the word Ecclesiastes, or in some Bible, like mine here, says Ecclesiastes or the preacher. So an Ecclesiastes is a preacher. The preacher, by definition, is one who stands up in an assembly and preaches, okay, or gives a speech, or gives a lesson, or gives a... So what we have to see here then is that Solomon is saying, I'm the preacher. Okay? And I'm the son of David. I'm king in Jerusalem, but I'm the preacher. Okay? And I'm going to address this congregation. And then verse 2 shows up. Okay? And verse 2 says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Okay? Now, vanity is emptiness. Okay? So he's saying, here's the preacher. And the preacher standing up to the congregation, whatever congregation his target audience is here. We know it's contained in Scripture, so we're as much a target now as whoever he originally decided to bring this message to. And he says this, he says, it's all vanities. Okay? It's all vanity. It's all empty. Okay? I think it's interesting that it's the preacher, okay, the guy who identifies himself as the preacher, who has tested the veracity of all the claims of life in order to see which one has substance, which one is beneficial, which one is a waste of time. Okay? And it's the preacher that has done. And then the preacher comes back and the preacher presents it to the congregation. Says, here's my life experience. Here's what I've tested. Here's what I've seen. Here's what I've explored. Here's what I've studied. And now let me come back to you and let me present this to you. Okay? It is undeniable that this book starts focusing in on youth. Okay? So it's going to be kind of broad at the beginning, but the target audience is really going to focus toward the end of the book down to youth. Okay? Now that makes sense, doesn't it? Because here is a group of people that are about to venture off on life, right? And there is a lot of living to be done. There's a lot of things that are going to come across their path. And the preacher is trying to tell the youth, hey, here's the things I've tested. Here's the things that I've experimented with. And I'm telling you right now, this is worth it. This isn't. So that the youth then have the ability to not have to test it, okay, in order to determine whether or not it's safe or something that they want to do. And I realize that we have at times lived in a culture, or currently live in a culture, that we have a very youth-driven culture that doesn't want to learn from the past generation. Okay, they don't value the past generation's experience. Okay, and I think some of that is a corruption from people who want to eradicate the past so that they can turn around and do the same things and nobody knows what they're doing. And it's a power play, but I think it's also just a rebellion against the God-ordained order and what God has provided for people, so you don't have to make the mistakes. So, it's odd to me that we get warning labels on things, okay, and those warning labels, we read them, right, and we abide by those warning labels, right. We don't take the warning label and go, what do they know? And then proceed to go down the path of testing it to see what it'll do. We take the warning. I was thinking recently I've had some medication and there were warning labels, the typical stuff, on there, how often to take it, make sure you take it with food because it can cause GI issues and, could cause drowsiness, blah, blah, blah. There's all those warnings that you get on medicine labels, right? I don't ever recall in my life, maybe you've done this, I've never done this, but I don't ever recall in my life where I looked at one of those labels and says, I don't believe them. I'll test this myself. I'll take the whole bottle at once and see if it gives me gastrointestinal issues. I'll take it with water, not with food, and see if it causes, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to go ahead and take the whole bottle and drive and just see if it makes me sleepy. Right? I mean, most people don't do something like that, right? They don't. If there's a warning label, you just assume that somebody who's warning you has done the tests, come to the conclusions, okay, slap the warning label on there for you so that you don't have to repeat the experiment, which could ultimately be very dangerous, right? It's like walk up to a fence and it has a sign on it that says, beware of dog, okay? Sensible people don't just walk in. And I'll determine whether or not the dog has to beware of. I'll judge whether this is a vicious dog. Most people just take the warnings and go, I'll just stay. One time I was out doing some evangelism. This is when I was young, very young, 17 actually. I was out doing some evangelism, and I walked up upon this chain link fence, and it had a beware of dogs sign on it, and I didn't see any dogs anywhere, none of dogs, nothing. There's a beware of dog sign. I'm like, I wonder if there's any dog. I don't see any dogs, so I grabbed the fence, it rattled. There were 6 dogs at that gate like that, frothing and barking and going crazy. So I thought, well, I'll be clever. Let's roll this track up and I'll stick it in the, because it had those swirly things on the top of the gate. I'll just stick it in there. And that way I can leave something without bringing my 17-year-old life in danger. So I stuck it in there. And one of those dogs got up, grabbed it, pulled it out, and just read it. I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't think these people want the gospel. But there was a sign. It said, beware of dogs. And they weren't kidding. Okay. I even believe those signs that people put on their house that says, forget the dog, beware the owner. Okay. I believe those. One time I was out with a friend of mine. Again, we were doing some evangelism. I've gotten more trouble doing evangelism than anything else. And we came upon, this is back in the piney woods of East Texas. They have to import sunshine, because it's just so back in the woods. And he drove up and he had this little old Ford Fiesta, blue Ford Fiesta, that was having a lot of mechanical issues. Okay. So he sees this little path that looks like it's, going back some ways, and he decides he's going to take the car down the little path. See what's back there. See who lives back there. Well, as we're going down the little path, there are signs posted on the trees beside the path. No trespassing. Things like owners will be shot as wild deer. I mean, these were literally the signs. So I'm like, hey, are you reading are you reading these signs? I think we should really turn around and go back. They just post them. They don't mean them. And I'm like, what? So we pull up, and there's a nice little trailer house sitting there. Back in the woods. They cleared off, put a little trailer back there. He gets out of the car, goes, knocks on the door, and we are greeted at the door with a shotgun. And the man says, didn't you read the signs? And my friend says, well, I didn't think you really meant it. He goes, do you think I mean it now? And I said, I do. I believed you when I was held hostage coming down the trail. Well, then the guy said, get off my property. I said, come on, let's go. We're not sticking around here. So we got back up to the car, and guess what? It wouldn't start. We got a guy standing on the front porch with a shotgun. All these nights in Texas, you understand Texas. He could shoot us right there, shoot us dead, and the law would be in his favor. Do you understand? Literally, he could kill us right there, and he would not go to jail. That's what they shouldn't have driven up on your property. It's exactly what would have happened in the state of Texas. Okay? We are totally no legal rights, no legal protections. Okay? And now the car won't start. So, Run. He pops the hood of the car. So I'm standing by the passenger door. He's tinkering with it. I don't know what he's trying to get it started. He literally is trying to get it started. But at this point, he didn't know what was mechanically wrong with his car. It's just that sometimes it wouldn't start, and other times he could tinker with it and it'd start up. So that's what he was trying to do. He really was trying to reverse and get out of there. Okay, but the car was not cooperating. Okay. So the guy with the shotgun comes off the porch, starts walking toward us. I get in the car, I shut the door. And he gets over there, and of course there's obviously my friend is a little hot under the collar at the moment, because the guy's threatening to shoot him. And but in all fairness, like I said, in the state of Texas, the guy was totally in the right, and we were totally in the wrong. And so the guy agrees to help him push the car backwards down the path and get it off his property. And so we start to go down, and the car starts, because again, it was kind of an uphill thing. So the car starts accelerating quite quickly, reversing down the path. Still hasn't started, you understand. It's just rolling. And anyway, we did get out of there with our lives, although we didn't get out of there without damaging the car, because my friend decided he didn't want the car going out in the street, so he swerved it because he was over there with the steering wheel, and he swerved it and ran it into a tree. Well, he was outside the car. We were outside the car pushing, and he had his arm in there. Yeah, so, and because we're all three pushing the car, trying to get it out. And of course, once the car was off his property, he just turned around and marched right back to his house. Just as easy, with the shotgun over his shoulder. And so I looked at my friend. He said, I can't believe it. Look at that, my car. I said, well, do you believe violators will be shot as wild deer now? He could have. He didn't have to say nothing, because he warned all the way down that pathway. Okay? He could have literally just pointed the gun out the door and blow us away. It was his prerogative in the state of Texas. Okay? So, I'm just saying, he had every right. I still tease that guy to this day. Every time he starts suggesting that I enter into some type of a deal with him, that I think is a little sketchy or a little less than safe, I always remind him that violators will be shot as wild deer. You made a bad call that day, buddy, and I ain't got a good feeling about this one. But never again have I gone down the path with him with a sign that says, I don't even think, metaphorically, never again have I gone down a path with him that I saw a sign that metaphorically said violators will be shot as wild deer. And it's because people should listen to the warning labels. And if you don't listen to the warning labels, you get silly things. Like now you can't buy Tide Pods without an employee coming to get them because now they're locked behind glass because someone's swallowing them. But nowhere on the box does it say they're edible or they're fit for human consumption. These are dumb things people do. It's like this pizza box someone showed me, which literally on the pizza box it said, please consume food inside box. Box is not edible. Why would you need to do that? Why would you need to post that the box is not edible? Although I have to say this, when I was working in a restaurant, yes, yeah. Caution, yeah, caution. Hot coffee may be hot, or it's like peanut butter. Caution, may have been produced on machinery that contains or may contain peanuts, or produced on machinery that processes peanuts. And like I hope to shout, it's peanut butter. I hope at least it came near a peanut sometime in its life. But it's great. But it's just yeah. Anyway, so back to the warning label thing, and there's people, they're there so you don't have to make this mistake. Okay, you don't have to be silly. Obviously, what happened somewhere, as you pointed out, someone got the hot coffee and got burnt, so they sued, even though it says hot coffee on it. And we should realize it's hot. Okay. And I got news for you. A lot of these places you go to, like Starbucks or whatever, or you get it's hot. I mean, it's amazing it's still in liquid form. I mean, it is so hot. I got to sit it down and let it cool off because it's hot. I'm not going to burn my tongue with that stuff. I can't believe how hot they make it. And but nevertheless, there it is. It's hot. Or someone has tried to eat the box, so they have to put boxes not. You know why? Because someone somewhere ate the box. And what they're hoping to do is prevent someone else from being that stupid. So they put a warning label on there. Don't eat the box. Don't swallow the Tide Pods. Don't do these things because there's some experience here. Now, what Solomon is basically leading us up to in a much more generic overall scope of things is here's some things that in my scope, as I'm the preacher, I'm going to present these to you. I'm going to tell you about these things, okay? As the son of David, as the king of Jerusalem, I've had access to a lot of things, and we all know his story, okay? I've had access to a lot of things, okay? Remember, the Bible records that he wrote about trees. He did a lot of things Solomon did in his life. We tend to focus more on his, 1,000 wives, but at the same time, all of them being heathen and where he went toward the end of his life. But during that long life, Solomon made a lot of experiments. Solomon did a lot of studying. Solomon tested life. Solomon tested the veracity of biblical claims. Okay? He did a lot of things, and Ecclesiastes is essentially the book of what he uncovered. Okay? Here are the pros, here are the cons. Okay? If you do this, here's probably going to be the results. Okay? But the big theme that he comes up with is that word vanity. It's repeated over and over again, his conclusions. It's vain. It's empty. That doesn't mean in certain cases he doesn't say enjoy certain things. Okay? But in a comparison to the spiritual world, because obviously he lands on fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. Everything else is empty and vain. Okay? It doesn't mean, and we'll have to review when we get to the end of the book, we'll review all this again because this is where his conclusions are going to come from. But he starts out the book in his epilogue by telling you, here's the big reveal. It's all pretty empty. Everything man strives for and man thinks is important doesn't mean you can't enjoy certain aspects of it, but in the end it's empty and in vain. To put it into some modern concepts, cars are pretty vain. I mean, they serve a practical purpose, especially in our world where we've built everything for the automobile because everything's so far away. And but at the same time, do we really need all that power and all that bling and all that? Does you really? Do you need it? Les is like, yes. And but I mean, but this is what it gets back into. You don't really need it. You know you don't. But Solomon says, enjoy it, but as long as you don't live for it, worship it, and think it's everything that you are, it defines who you are and it defines life. But if you enjoy fast cars and you enjoy the bling and God has blessed you and given you the ability to have it, then enjoy it. But just don't make it what defines you, and end up like an idol. Exactly right. Because in the end of the day, we've all read the descriptions of life with Christ in eternity. There'll be no muscle cars there. I'm sorry. We're pretty much pedestrians, maybe horses at the most. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that we just totally, and again, this is the amazing thing Solomon finds out. Enjoy it. If it's not harmful, enjoy it. But understand it's empty. At the end of the day, it's vanity. And enjoy it. If it's not going to harm anybody or harm you or lead you into idolatry, then by all means enjoy it. It's there. There's nothing wrong with having a big, nice house. I think some of those down north on Eubank are a little over the top. And I thought they were hotels. They're so huge. I thought they were hotels. And and if one or two people live in that great big house, I'm like, wow, really? And I mean, I can see that as a multi-generational family home, where granddad and mom have their wing and cousin has his wing, something like that. I can totally understand that. Completely understand that. But at the same time, I don't personally begrudge the person that owns that home if he or she can afford it. I wouldn't want to pay the property tax on that thing. Woo! Do you know what the property tax on that thing, Debbie? Wow. Again, empty and vain. But this is. I don't want to. We're going to look at specifics as we go through this, but this is his opening epilogue. Hey, I'm the preacher. And in case you want to know who the preacher is, I'm the son of David, the king in Jerusalem. Now, let me tell you, I'm about to deliver you a sermon, a 12-chapter sermon. Because I'm going to start out letting you know, one of my homiletics professors used to say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And that's the 3 parts of a sermon. The prologue, the epilogue, and then the actual substance that you prove in the middle. This is Solomon, his first 3 verses. Here's prologue, right? It's the beginning, right? Epilogue's the end. Okay, so here's my prologue. Here's what I'm about to tell you. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanities. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? Question. Now he's going to answer the questions. This is the question. So he says everything's vanity. So let me ask you a question. What real profit is there? The labor under the sun. So see what he's focusing on. He's not saying eternal things are vain and empty. He's saying, what profit do you really have? Because think about it. You're born, you live, you die. All the big houses, all the fancy cars, everything you assemble while you're alive, what good are they to you after you're dead? What was it Job said? Naked came I into this world, and naked. And that's true. At the end of the day, whatever you possessed during your life will be somebody else's when you die. You will not have it. So as much as people live their life to acquire things, this is why when Jesus gave us the parable of the rich man who built bigger barns, right, to hold all his stuff, what did he say? Thou fool, tonight thy soul shall be required of thee. And then who shall those things be? Well, this is a common reoccurring theme in Scripture. Now, is it wrong for the man to be rich? No. It's not. Is it wrong for him to save? No. But what was that man's attitude? Soul, rest yourself. You're good and easy. Look at that. You got everything you need. Look at you about fully. His confidence his identity, okay, his security was all in his earthly possessions. And that's why Christ mocked him. Said, seriously? And this is why Christ teaches us all the time when in the Gospels to labor not for the things that rust and corrupt, but labor for the spiritual things that rust and corruption cannot touch. But once again, did Jesus enjoy nice meals? Sure he did. Did Jesus travel on nice boats? Sure he did. Did he stay in nice houses? Sure he did. Did he take up offerings? Yeah, he absolutely did. Judas had to bag. They took up offerings all the time. There was no problem with that. The difference was, what are you actually living for? And so the preacher says, what profit hath a man of all his labors which he taketh under the sun? What real profit is it? Because after all, you're born into this world with nothing, and you'll ultimately exit this world with nothing. Last Sunday, we did a funeral or a memorial service or whatever you want to call it. About 100 people showed up to the thing. It was quite amazing. And there was a vase sitting on a table at the front of the room containing the ashes of the young lady who passed away. There was an incredible crowd of people there. Very wonderful crowd. Very, very, very responsive crowd. Very nice. Could have been a lot worse. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what value is that to her? She's gone. She's not there. All the money that was spent, and we donated our services, but all the money that was spent for that event meant nothing to her. They're not. Because at the end of the day, what did she take with her? Nothing. She took nothing out of this world with her. Just like she brought nothing into the world with her. And you're standing there, and all you can do is talk about memories because there's nothing left. This is even why the scripture says that what is your life? It's even a vapor. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And I think Solomon, and again, and every preacher, honestly, should dedicate their ministry to helping people focus on the right location. Some people say, don't preach to me. I'm just trying to help you understand that everything you're laboring for is empty and vain. Not telling you not to enjoy it, just saying it's empty and vain. And that you ought to focus your life on what's to come. And you ought to live your life. Well, I'm young and I want to... Yeah, but you know what? Your age has nothing to do with the day you're going to die. That young lady whose funeral we did, what was she? 23. There were 80-year-olds sitting in the crowd. We weren't at their funeral. We were at the funeral of a 23-year-old. Because your age has nothing to do with the day you're going to die. And so I'm young. I've got plenty of life to live. You do not know that because your age has nothing to do with the day you're going to die. Well, he's really, really sick, so he should. Your health has nothing to do with the day you're going to die. It may have a lot to do with the quality of their life until the day you die, but it has nothing to do with the day you're going to die. I've known people that the doctors gave 3 months to live with cancer that went on living 20 years afterwards. Cancer did eventually kill them, but not for another 20 years. Just saying. So your health has nothing to do. I know perfectly healthy people drop dead or die in an automobile accident or something like that or get shot. Perfectly healthy. Boom. They're gone. And then people are doing autopsies trying to figure out what it was. Don't understand it. Why did they die? They're looking over at this obese person over here with pimples from the head of their, and thinking they're going to drop dead and they'll outlive everybody. Because neither your age nor the quality of your health has anything to do with the day you're going to die. There's only one who decides the moment you die, and that's God. Okay? God decides the moment. You will not die 1 minute before, and you will not die 1 minute after God says you're going to die. Okay? It is a hard fact that you will not change. God is the author of life. Jesus has the keys to death, hell, and the grave. They get to decide, not us. Okay? And I know people throw up the suicide thing, which most don't work, which just means the one that do, God said, yep, this is your day. Unfortunately, it's at your own hands, but it's your day. Because if it wasn't their day, then they wouldn't be able to kill themselves. Nobody has that power. That most suicides is what it is. It's a pride power thing. I'll show you. I'll control my. You don't. You don't. God does. So therefore, that all being true, then where should our focus and attention be? Should it be on things of this world? Should they take the priority, or should heaven take the priority? Heaven should take the priority. Eternity should take the priority. Why? Because this life is vain. The achievements and accomplishments we have in this life are vain. It doesn't mean we can't enjoy them. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy ice cream, brownies. Sorry. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy a good cup of tea. Okay? Doesn't mean you can't enjoy things in life. But at the same time, one has to realize the priorities are eternity. So Solomon's setting us up. He's going to prove from verse 4 till we get to the end, till he gets to his epilogue, where he rehashes everything again. He's going to set out his argument for why he says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanities. How I want us to view the book, though, is understanding this is a preacher. Maybe Old Testament, but he's still a preacher. Okay? And he's standing up to a congregation somewhere, and he's saying, okay, here's the scope. Here's the what's the word the gangsters use, or the people on the street? Not the scope. The scoop, maybe? Scoop? I don't know. Here's the scoop. Here's the deal. Okay? And here's what it is. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanities. You know why some people don't want to be preached to? Because they don't want to be told that everything they're living for is a waste of time. That in the end they don't want to come face to face with the reality of death till they're dead. That's a sad thing, isn't it? Nobody wants to talk to the preacher until they're dead. Then they want the preacher. As if the preacher showing up is going to make the difference, since you didn't listen to anybody the whole time you were there. And yet, if there's anybody that's going to turn around and go, okay, let's put things back into perspective here. Okay? Whose job it is to remind us all, let's put things back into perspective here. I have to remind myself all the time, because obviously, I have a job outside this ministry. And I have to remind myself all the time, this job doesn't define me. This is not who I am. This is what I do. Okay? But it's not who I am. Okay? And I think this is the ultimate thing that, again, Solomon's going to present some pretty incredible evidence to his argument here. But at the same time, it's so essential. And I think this is where even churches have lost it. Okay? I read the other day, this church excited that they're going to they finally got what they need to build, their student life center. What? What does it got to do with anything in the price? I'm not opposed, but we're going to celebrate the acquisition of more material goods instead of, hey man, we managed to go and preach the gospel to here, and we reached out to there. No, we're building a student life center. It's going to be $5 million in value by the time we get it done or more. For what? What is the purpose of that? People have gymnasiums. I don't know why a church would have a gymnasium. If you actually study what gymnasiums are and what they were used for, why would you ever have something attached to your church sanctuary called a gymnasium? So I don't understand it at all. The gymnasium was where Greek and Roman people went to exercise in the nude. They didn't exercise outside because they were in the nude. So they had buildings and they went and exercised in the nude. Why would a church have something named something that has a? I don't get it. There's a lot of things I don't get because people don't read and study. They don't get it. They're very. We got a gymnasium. Okay. Yeah, that's real Christian there, buddy. And you just go right on ahead. Or they do all these. And again, is there anything wrong with playing sports? No, nothing wrong with playing sports. If you got a favorite football team or baseball team or soccer team or whatever, who cares? But if you're like the British and you're more enthusiastic about your football team than you are about Christ, now we've got problems. If you get more excited about your football match than you do Christ, now we got problems. See? Because the football match, let me tell you something. And I'll close with this illustration. I really will, Lex. I'm going to close with this illustration. When we were back in England, there used to be they have all these football clubs, right? Arsenal, Manchester United, various football clubs. Then they have the World Cup that shows up, and then they combine people from these various clubs in nations, and they create England, the English team. And there are two great players on the English football club. I'm sure there are a lot of great, but two of notoriety. Okay, one was Michael Owens. I knew it was Owens. I forgot the first name. And the other was David Beckham. Now, you probably all heard of David Beckham, but you've never heard probably of Michael Owens. Well, obviously David Beckham's a little better at marketing himself. And so plus he married a Spice Girl, so Michael Owens did not marry anybody like that. So again, David Beckham, huh? Well, they're still married. They got kids. I mean, it's actually been a very, for that marriage, it's been long, and they've had children, and they're doing well. And as far as we know, there are no scandals involved around them. And but nevertheless, it's not the important bit. See, I was good. You sent it down the wrong road. But so anyway, England had the prior World Cup before been sent home. Okay. And they were sent home, and they were very embarrassed, okay, because they were sent home. But there's strict rules in the World Cup, okay. And if fans get out of hand, the whole team gets sent home. I mean, it's really strict. But anyway, Beckham attempted to make a goal with his signature maneuver, which they describe as bend it like Beckham. He's got this weird kick where he puts some spin on the ball and it hooks, and it's very difficult for a goalie because you think it's going to go one way and then suddenly it shoots right around you. So it's his trademark. They made a movie called Bend It Like Beckham. I mean, this is how infamous. But he was up against, I believe it was Argentina or Venezuela. It was a Latin American country. And he did his signature move, but the goalie got it. And it ticked him off. And it ticked off the fans. And they all got sent home. Okay? Because it's the beautiful game. You just don't behave yourself like that. Well, they did, including him. Disgraced himself. Disgraced everything. But during that time, however, there was one moment that took place the same year. And it happened before that. By Michael Owen. Michael Owen was a striker. Okay? Basically what that meant, he could get the ball from the far end of the field, and his job was to drive it all the way down the field. And so, in this same tournament, before they all got thrown out, it was the only glory for the whole entire English team. Michael Owen got the ball. Okay? And Michael Owen drove that thing. I mean, somehow, some way, he got from the opposite end of the field to the goal. And I mean, the people were going crazy. But again, this is before Beckham does his little thing. And it's funny listening to the broadcast of it because, again, these are British. They're stoic, reserved, stiff-upper lip, right? Michael Owen has the ball. Michael Owen's moving forward. Look at Michael Owen go. Michael Owen's going. Michael Owen! Look at Michael Owen! Ah! So this posh BBC broadcaster is screaming his full head off because Michael Owen got to go. Then, of course, they were all sent home. So the cycle has come around again. It is time for World Cup again. David Beckham has redeemed himself with the British public in the interim. Michael Owen is still the hero from the last tournament. So instead of marketing the English team with simply David Beckham, they stick Michael Owen in there with them. And I mean, huh? No. This was back in England. Okay, this was back when we were in England, not recently. I'm sure they're too old to do it there. But so there, the big thing was, here's our hero who's redeemed himself, but here's the guy who saved face for us, and did this. And so now they're back in the game, both of them in the game again. And again, you never hear of Michael Owen during the game. He's really not that big of a character. He just had a really good moment in comparison to the Beckham's really bad moment. Well, guess what? Beckham's up against the same team and the same goalie. And things come around where Beckham's got to do it again. We are out on the streets. Okay, we're shopping, whatever. There are people gathered around plate glass windows with TVs on the other side. All of this, everyone stopped because Beckham is facing the same goalie again at the World Cup. There was big things about Michael Owen, but once the game started, nobody cared about Michael Owen again. Okay, he's a striker. He's a low-level player in the whole thing. Nobody cares. Okay, plus he doesn't have a superstar lifestyle or personality or wife or anything like that. So we're walking. It was easy getting from point A to point B because there was nobody in your way. Everybody was glued to TV sets. And as we're walking down the built-up area, the high street area of the town, it's the event. And guess what? Beckham makes the goal. You'd have thought World War II ended all over again. People were kissing and dancing and jumping up in the street and shouting. And I mean, there was a roar through the entire place. It was unbelievable. I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess Beckham must have made his goal, and blah, 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 blah. And I remember we were headed someplace and we were going down this alley and this gang of guys were coming toward us, all in the red and white, English and things. And I'm walking along, and this guy leans over to me and says, "How about that, mate? How about that, Beckham?" He leans over to me. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it." He goes, he freezes. They all freeze. Look at me. "You're not from around here, are you, mate?" No. Oh, yeah. It was just really, really fun. But at the end of the day, okay, it was a funny event. It's a funny story. What does it matter? Beckham went on to injure his leg. He ain't playing no more. He went off and played for Spain. Now, everything changed. All that buildup for that moment. What did it mean at the end of the day? Nothing. They didn't win the World Cup. Always a few minor redemptive victories, if you will. England had a little pride again, But at the end of the day, their star player, and they were upset because he was their star player. And guess what he did? He went to go work for, Madrid, Royal Madrid, over in Spain. Then he came over here, the English hero. So what was the point? Well, I'm glad they had their moment of victory. Their redemption, their pride was healed. Nothing wrong with that. I'm glad they were excited. Those guys were excited. They were sharing it with, because most of the time the British don't talk to strangers. But, I tell you what, they were talking to strangers then. They were celebrating. It's fine. Wonderful. I loved all the red cars that ended up with the English flag on the hood. It was great, man. It's like here they had English flags flying from the cars everywhere, and then when they'd pass another one, they'd honk. It was like being in America all of a sudden. As far as the openness, it was great. Didn't last but about a month, and it was kind of all over with. Then they were angry with him again because he moved to Royal Madrid. Then he came here. They were just like, "What? But he's our English." And the illustration is just to say this: it is vain and vanity. Because all things are going to change at the end of the day, and Beckham chased the dollar, not the English pride. And even though a lot of people had a lot of pride in the fact that he redeemed himself, but ultimately it was vain and it was empty. His labor under the sun, what did it mean? Well, I'm glad they got to enjoy it. It probably brought a lot of people together that despised each other before that moment for a little bit, and then it was gone. I don't begrudge them being happy that Beckham redeemed the English pride. That's wonderful. I'm glad for that. It was wonderful to see them celebrating in the streets. But a month later, it was like it never happened. It was all over. Why? Because it's vain. It's vanity. It's vain. It's empty. And that's going to be Solomon's lesson as we go through this. So let's pray, and then we'll sing our song and be dismissed. Father, thank you so much for giving us your